prayer and pledge. You may stand right now. Jones?
Good morning. Let's ask the Lord to join us this morning. Father, we thank you for every leader in this room. We ask your blessings upon them. Father, every believer knows that we are living in the days that you described in Matthew 24, which requires serious men and serious leaders for serious times. We ask you not to let any man nor philosophy divide us, and keep this county as strong as you have. And bless in the following proceedings, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. You'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the Pinal County Board of Supervisors. I'll call this meeting to order. So I want to take a personal point of privilege at this point. I'm curious how many people in the audience received this email from Mr. Kavanaugh. Okay. Well, it's full of misinformation, it's misleading, and is not true. Recently, an accusation was made via post by the Pinal County Supervisor Kevin Kavanaugh, stating that I unilaterally removed prayer from Pinal County Board of Supervisors meetings. For that decision, Chairman Miller was praised by the Saintons of Santan, and stating that I unilaterally removed prayer is misleading and is furthest from the truth. Such misinformation is not only untrue, but decisive to the people of Pinal County. To add to his statement, accurately, prayer at the October 27th meeting was not conducted because I was informed the scheduled pastor had not shown up to the meeting to deliver the prayer in the interest of conforming to the length of the agenda before us, and I in light of the recent briefing from legal counsel as chairman, I decided, I don't have a problem with that we would move on to the next item instead of waiting for the pastor to arrive. As a devoted follower of Christ, prayer is essential and has been a prominent foundation for our country and part of the board meetings process for years. Because of the recent citizens' concerns surrounding our invocation process, I have been working with supervisors and county legal's team to create a strong and sound invocation policy for our board meetings for generations to come. In fact, Supervisor Goodman went so far as to request an agenda item and to an upcoming meeting and possible policy and consideration on this very topic. A fact well known by Supervisor Kavanaugh. In the end, I believe statements like those of Supervisor Kavanaugh's are divisive, make me question his motives, as opposed to generating a genuine spirit of cooperation and tolerance and devotion, which is our society's needs and what most faiths espouse to. You know, I want to tell you right now, this is so divisive to think that this brings into question my character, and I'll stand my character up to anybody in this room. I've been here for 50 years in this town, in this county. I love this place. and I spend my time trying to better the lives and the quality of life for my citizens. I don't have time to go around and drag down character assassination. It is just not, it's non-productive. We have, Mr. Kavanaugh has interrupted the workflow in this county, has people on edge all the time.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
I have not recognized you.
You don't have to. In a
No.
point of order, you accuse me of you're accusing me of interrupting.
Chair,
I'm
I'd
gonna
like
go
to
ahead
make a
and accuse you.
motion, please.
Yes, go ahead.
To
Mr.
I
McClure.
would like to suspend our rules.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. They've been suspended. So, my point is, if we're going to spend our time doing character assassination instead of the work of a county supervisor to provide service and represent the districts that we've been elected to, we won't get anything done here. I feel sorry for the people that live in District 1. And if you need help, call me. Because you're not being represented. Our job is set policy and to spend your tax dollars and to take care of business, but not run around and interrupt the flow of our work and our people. So, you know, there's a couple of things. You can go to hell for lying just as well as stealing. And if you're going to go out there and search around on the internet, the black web, beware of the false prophets. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respond to that. Since we've suspended the rules, I'll respond. Just prior to this meeting, I leaned over to the chairman because a blog post came out with my name on it. And when I saw the blog post, it was emailed to me too, and I didn't write it. And what I realized was when I told some guys they could start a blog for county information, they put my name in the background and everything. They registered it in my name. And I said, hey, I saw this blog post, and it came out. I said, this looks like I wrote this thing, guys. Number one, so my name's on it, and I didn't write it. And I said, number two, don't attack other supervisors. If you write something, don't attack them. That's number two. So we talk about lies. This whole thing, even before this meeting, I said, Mr. Miller, I didn't write this. I got 5 minutes after I received the email, I started calling and got the login and password so I could have control over this thing. So I apologize to Mr. Chairman that a blog post came out that I didn't write but had my name on it. And I went in and I changed everything to get my name off. So if people want to have a political discussion, they may do so. But he knows that I didn't write that post. And he knows that, in fact, I've told county management, Mr. Miller started with a public attack in a newspaper against me. This is what Mr. Miller did a few weeks ago.
Mr. Chair,
Supervisor Goodman.
this is actually the second email that has come from that particular blog. The first one being the COVID issue and us as board members being called out in the way that it was written. I brought that to your attention, and it was never even brought out publicly by you from that first email. And you assured me that you would do something about it, and here we are on a second email, a whole month from the very first email. And now you're publicly making a statement that this was a blog that you actually have control over.
As of yesterday.
Okay, but irregardless, you're the one that started the blog.
I did not start the blog.
Okay, but you gave permission for them to use it and even use your name. Did you not?
All right. Stop. Stop right there. We're going to continue with the meeting, and you can take this outside, as far as I'm concerned. There was no attempt to let everybody know about the blog I mean, if the blog is out there and it's wrong, why don't you get on the blog and tell everybody that you didn't do it? You didn't do that. So anyway, moving along, we got public comment. Natasha, I understand you have some emails. So consideration and discussion of comments from the public. Those wishing to address Pinal County Board of Supervisors may appear in person or submit in writing comments which shall be submitted to the clerk of the board by close of business day 5 p.m. prior to the meeting. Comments shall be no more than 250 words. Actions taken will be a result of public comment will be limited to direction to staff to study the matter and reschedule the matter for further consideration and discussion at a later date. And we're not going to be reading these emails in totality, but Natasha, because we don't have to. Okay.
Chairman, the clerk of the board has received 10 comments. The board will be provided a copy of all 10 comments in full, and all 10 comments will be a part of today's meeting records.
Thank you.
For the 10 comments, I will announce their name, identify if the comment is in favor or in opposition to the matter. First comment is from Kent Thronell from Oracle. Mr. Kent is in favor of public health agenda item number 1. Comment from Jeffrey and Ellen Basso from Oracle. They are in favor of public health agenda item number 1. Comment from Emily Dewell from Oracle. The comment is in favor of public health agenda item number 1. Comment is from Judy Smith. Judy Smith is neutral, so therefore I will read just an insert from her comment. I have no problem with sharing information by different venues. My problem is that the content of that information and how the vaccine coordinator will implement. Next comment, David Jeffrey from Oracle is in favor of public health agenda item number 1. Next comment is from Mary Ellen Castay from Oracle. In regarding to the invocation or lack of a moment or a moment of silence does seem as an elegant and righteous solution. And her second comment is that she is in favor of the public health agenda item number 1. Next comment is from Chris Holloman from Oracle. Chris is in favor of the public health agenda item number 1 and states for prayer of any type at these meetings is a waste of time and money. Next comment is Sue Paru from Oracle, is in opposition, rejecting opening prayer. In comment from Sean Carter from Salmon Well. Sean is in favor regarding the legislative prayer and is in opposition to public health agenda item number 1. And also for the record, Chairman, the board has been provided with the full copy of the 10 comments.
Correct, and they are available when the agenda is, when the minutes are posted, they will be part of the record and you can read them in full. So in the interest of time, I'll open up the floor for public comment. You have 1 minute. Come up, state your name, and tell us your position on whatever it is you want to talk about. 1 minute. Why? Because in the interest of time.
I thought that it was stated that it was 3 minutes,
No.
and you've already started my time.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say that I am shocked that the meeting wasn't opened and then we said the pledge and the prayer. So wrong. Since you've limited my time, I will cut it more short. That we, the people, several hundred from Saddlebrook Ranch, are so disappointed in our representation. We are not being represented by you correctly upholding your oaths of office. At times, I used to come every Wednesday, but I quit coming because I saw I couldn't do any good. You guys decide, you have people want money, you give them the money with maybe one question. But it's time to stop delegating your authority to other people and to make sure that people's job descriptions are being fully upheld. I heard about what went on last week, and I heard that my name wasn't even mentioned as the comment that I had sent in.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, this is Robert's Rules of Orders.
We have suspended the rules.
Really simple and easy. Maybe you need an ethics committee.
Ma'am, sit down. No, go ahead. Come on up.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon me?
Point of order. We never came out of, you suspended the rules. You mentioned, and we never came back out of suspended rules.
I know.
Okay, well, then there are no rules. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Ottle. I live in Robeson Ranch at 5275 North Grand Canyon Drive. And so, Mr. Miller, it's nice to meet you because you're my supervisor. And I go by Jeff. You probably do too, Mr. McClure. I just have a couple of quick things. It'll be well within a minute. The first thing is, it seems evident to me that all of what I've read about the audit, I've read the entire results, probably 3 or 4 different ways, would prove that there's some irregularities that took place in that handling of that election in Maricopa County. I won't use words such as criminal or fraud, although probably both are true. Anyway, I'm asking that you guys would do, that you as our Board of Supervisors would do what you can to just, I think that this should be moved to where these people that have done these things are investigated, arrested, and prosecuted by the laws of the state of Arizona and federal laws as well. Okay. That's on that point. The second one and last one is that I have an issue with these machines that were purchased by Pinal County, ES&S machines. Yes, they're designated, as I understand it, for the time being, to be used by handicap or people who have disabilities and whatnot, and I think that's great. My concern is that this is a slippery slope issue where paper ballots aren't going to be required, and pretty soon we get to the point where there aren't any more paper ballots.
Okay, well, we'll look into that and get back to you.
Did I go through my time already?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll try and get back to you on it.
Hello, my name is Judy Smith, and I live in Oracle. I'm was a registered pharmacist for up to 40 years. I would like to read you a quote that I just read this morning. I am discussing the COVID coordinator, and this is from Dr. Eric Rubin, the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, which is not a fly-by-night organization. He expressed the concern of many members about possible severe side effects that cannot yet be measured. He concluded that there was no other way forward, and here is his direct quote: "We're never going to learn how safe the vaccine is unless we start giving it." He said, "That's just the way it goes." So, and in reference to the vaccine coordinator, I would like to say that I am for people getting the proper information. There is no question in my mind that people do need information. However, the CDC, the FDA, and the NIH have been less than credible information. They've given out very confusing information. I want to know what this vaccine coordinator is going to do. What kind of information are they going to use, or are they going to follow this man's...
We will send you what their job description is. Thank you.
Pardon me? I didn't hear you.
I said we will get you a copy of the job description and send it to you.
That would
what
be
their
nice.
jobs are.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. By the way, I do pray for all of you on the board. I know you have a hard job.
Thank you. Next. Ladies first.
Good morning.
Morning.
I spoke with all of you a few weeks ago. I mainly was here to commend you on your wise decision to disapprove the vaccine equity coordinator. But since then, I've discovered that the subject has reared its ugly head for further discussion. I ran into Supervisor McClure at the National Community Night Out event in Oracle. He made me aware that there may be segments of our population that have been underserved when it comes to information and availability of the vaccine. I wondered if that were really true, so I began a personal quest to learn more. I remembered seeing signs on businesses for many, many months all over town, on highways, advertising both English and in Spanish, free COVID-19 shots and where to get them. So I began friendly, innocuous chats with people of all ages representing various ethnic groups. Everywhere I went, I focused on stores and organizations that provide assistance in the way of EBT cards and other social services. I also chatted with workers in hotels, restaurants, gas stations, and convenience stores. Eventually, I would ask, by the way, I'm curious, do you know anyone who does not know about the COVID-19 vaccine or where they can get it? The answer was always no. Then I asked, have you ever heard about anyone who may be homebound and unable to get the vaccine? I beg your pardon?
Your time is up. Thank you. We understand your position.
Sue Scott, I give my 1 minute to this lady because we were supposed to be given 3.
No, we don't do it that way. Next.
Yeah, the last time I came, it was 3 minutes. What has changed?
The time and consideration of the agenda today. You know, frankly, we don't even have to have public comment. It's not required.
Well, I appreciate that you do. I wish you would let everyone finish their comments. Thank you for letting me speak a little bit.
We understand your position.
Good morning. I cannot believe that I am in a function of my government. You people were elected by us. We elected you because we trusted you to serve us. And I am sitting here listening to you guys this morning, and I can't believe what I hear. First, I hear we now have 1 minute. No, nothing was sent out saying you have 1 minute, so limit your speech. Everyone's speech is 3 minutes because that's the time. You had the prayer, yes, but you had the prayer before the meeting was called to order. You suspended Robert's rules. You read comments sometimes. Sometimes, like last week, she reads, there are 3 for this, there are 8 against this. Today she read the names, and yes, they were for or against. Sometimes I have been here, and they read the whole email. I want to know why you did that, and when I ask you, why did you do this, you said, because we can.
Because of the interest of time and keeping this meeting flowing.
Because we can is what you said.
I did say that.
All right.
Tom? Wrong Tom. Just wait right there.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry. Would you inquire of the parliamentarian if we can continue lawfully under suspended rules?
Parliamentarian.
Mr. Chairman, while the rules are suspended, until they are reinstated, you can continue.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. Sir? Your name?
My name is James Spiegel from Oracle, Saddlebrook Ranch. So I'm here again to urge you to vote no on the public health item, that COVID equity coordinator position. There's no evidence that such a position is even needed. And I urge you to never give in to politically motivated agendas that come across as wolves in sheep's clothing. This equity coordinator position does exactly that. It's based on a false COVID narrative that dilutes the county's sovereignty. It opens doors for more government abuse and waste, and it very potentially could be used to take away our individual rights in terms of the information that's passed and what the government knows about us. And that, again, is another form of abuse that this opens us up to. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Tom Bean of Casa Grande. You are my supervisor. I'm here with reason number one why I think the invocation should be eliminated. I've been attending these meetings since the 80s, and I don't know when the invocation started, but it seems to me that it's a relatively recent thing. We've been getting chaplains coming here, and would you please bow your head? Nice. It's not universal. Some people say, raise your head, raise your hands, raise your arms, praise the Lord. Bow your head. Others drop to one knee and say a prayer. Others drop to two knees and say a prayer. Some people prostrate themselves on the ground. When I went to college back in the 60s, I took Religion 103 and 104, and 104 was universal religion. And there are so many ways to say a prayer. To have somebody come up here and tell me how I have to pray, it needs to come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you. One else?
Our founding fathers were extremely erudite individuals. They used their vast and deep knowledge when considering and writing our Constitution. One source had, at that time, existed for hundreds of years, and it still does. It's the Iroquois Constitution. Read it sometime. It advises the leader to make every decision based upon 7 generations beyond theirs. To consider their actions will affect at least 7 generations from them. That's powerful, gentlemen. That's powerful. I tell you this and ask you to think because I am concerned that too many of your decisions are short-sighted. Some are with no foresight or consideration for any people beyond yourselves and a limited number of individuals you know personally. Very short-sighted. Let me be specific and contemporary. Last week, individuals spoke to the gun range. Obviously, you had not queried the people who live in the area. Short-sighted. You dismissed a long-standing prayer based upon a letter that represents few, when in contrast, your constituency is many. What was the breadth and depth of your short-sighted decision? You will soon vote on a multi-million-dollar grant upon which some of us here have done more research than you have.
Thank you.
What are your future generational repercussions of your vote?
Continue.
Is your vote based on a personal I know somebody decision?
Thank you.
Or is it based on actual research and far-reaching effects? Break, gentlemen, break suit. All your constituents are watching you very carefully. Thank you.
Did she speak already?
I believe that people ought to know what this COVID is about and how our money is being misused. And this is actually grand theft of taxpayer money. I have 1 minute.
I wouldn't
See
touch
the
it.
clock?
Ma'am, you've already
People
spoke.
don't.
Excuse me, ma'am.
It doesn't say that we can't speak more than once, sir.
Excuse me,
As the chair, I can say that.
I want you to be seated.
Again,
Right. Because the chair has the
we need to
authority.
follow Robert's rules of orders.
Can we not argue?
Suspended the
Go be
rules.
seated? Ma'am, you need to be seated, please.
or you'll have to leave. Could you be seated, please, or you'll have to leave?
They stopped my minutes, and
I'm sorry.
we need to inform that your people who help you, our first line, need to also be represented so that they do not interrupt Robert's Rules of Orders because you are going out of Robert's rules.
I'm Noel Reck from Casa Grande. In regard to the invocation, as a player and a coach, I've been involved with football for many years. Probably been in about 500 locker rooms for pregame activities, including team prayers. The least effective method I've seen is a prayer that's read out loud. Some players don't buy in. It's not their faith or their words. It's just another thing to do pregame. The most effective, the method of silence, a moment of silence. The best coach I ever worked with said, take a minute, talk to whomever it is that you talk to. One player, it might be Grandpa who just passed away. Another, Dad who's serving overseas. Another, praying in his own faith. Another, just talking to himself. The power that built was incredible when they came out of it. You have the same compromise available. It's fair and it's powerful. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back.
Chairman, fellow supervisors, my name's Marion Ewing. I live in Oracle and Saddlebrook Ranch, and the first thing I'd like to say is I believe I have great representation in District 1. Thank you, Kevin Kavanaugh. The next thing I'd like to say is, why is the government trying so hard to get everybody to get a COVID shot? Everybody knows where to get it, and and hopefully we can leave people to be in charge of their own health care. We need to stop government overreach. We need to stop overspending. We need to start listening to the people. We do not need a vaccine passport because we, the people, when we stand together, have a very loud voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, gentleman in the rear.
I'll be brief. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Charlie Zoom, Santana Valley resident, Satanist, and member of the Satanic Temple, Hail Satan. I had a couple responses to the aforementioned email, but I'll go ahead and skip those as it's already been spoken about. To the rest of the board, I'm against invocations. Starting each board meeting with a Christian-only invocation is divisive and largely unconstitutional. If you recall, today and last week, you heard from a Christian resident in Pinal County who also is against invocations. That's my stance. I think I've made that clear. I'd like to leave one final thing here for the board. I'd like to quote from the Bible, actually, the most which most of these people hold in their, dear to their everyday lives. I'd like to quote Matthew chapter 6, verses 5 through 8. This is Matthew's account of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Number 5, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, you have received your reward in full. Lastly, but when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. It's not a church. This is not a pulpit. Let's keep it that way. Moment of silence. Inclusivity for everybody, including myself as a Satanist. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 2.
Mr. Chairman, a lady has risen to speak.
Chairman.
Okay. Sir. And then you, and then Mr. Rovellis.
Mr. Chairman, honored supervisors, my name is Luke Myers from Coolidge. $3.4 million is pocket change. It's not about money, but about principle. To introduce the principle, what are the 4 realms of government? If you ask people on the street, you'd hear federal, state, county, city? No. International? No. Church or family? Closer. Who remembers self-government? It is on self-government that family, church, civil government all depend. Self-government is easy to forget. No legislating it, no federal grants. Who grants self-government? Who demonstrated the most spectacular self-government? That would be Christ on the cross. It was a hard decision, but he went voluntarily. Do nails hold God's arms? He could have flung the nails into the crowd. He stayed on the cross voluntarily. He died on the cross voluntarily. That is self-government. Christ grants self-government, offers his Spirit to any who ask. Self-government is gospel fruit. What if we remembered self-government? What if we asked Jesus for more? What if the idea spread? Where do we start? I would cheer you on, our supervisors, if you said to this vaccine grant, we remember self-government. We believe ideas have consequences.
Okay.
We got this. We don't need the vaccine pocket change.
Thank you.
Supervisors, thank you. My name is Deborah Broom. I'm from Arizona City. This is a policy-making body. That's what it is. I realize that as a species, we need something to believe in, and there's nothing more powerful or private than what is in our heads. This is especially true of faith. However, not all people believe that the ability to make good law and public policy comes from an all-knowing being. Common decency and wisdom are all around us, emanating from all forms of faith, all religions, or no religion. If government officials are to have legitimacy and respect, then goodness, fairness, and an unbiased quality are attributes that are important traits in conducting government business, and they will go a long way in gaining support and respect for those people and positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rubelis?
My name is Roberto Rubelis, resident of Gold Canyon. Mr. Chairman, thank you for presiding in this tumultuous time. But this is an example of America at its best, actually.
Amen.
And so I think that all of us have the right to express ourselves. Let me just suggest, though, why the COVID vaccine is important. Out of 19 communities in Pinal County, 17 are experiencing high transmission rates. 2 are experiencing substantial transmission rates. In our schools, out of 16 school districts, Apache Junction School District is the 5th highest with number of cases, and it is the 3rd highest in the number of deaths of students. That's why it's important, Mr. Chairman, for you to approve funding for COVID vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, moving to item number 2 on the agenda. Presentation of the 2021 Arizona Planning Association Award and 2021 American Planning Association Award to Pinal County for the 2021 Joint Land Use Study. Mr. Abrams, there he is.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Are we still under, are we going to continue under suspended rules?
What? Well, nobody's made a motion to get out of them.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. I am happy to be here today to present to you the outstanding collaborative planning project for Pinal County and the Arizona National Guard Joint Land Use Study. We also received another award at the state level for our work on the same project for the from the Arizona chapter. I'd like to briefly mention that these 2 awards at the federal and state level represent the culmination and a very shining example of internal cooperation and external cooperation between community development, the many departments within Pinal County, and also outside of our building, including the National Guard, State Land Department, and many other stakeholders. The federal.
So it's interesting that we operate under suspended rules, and we're talking about the rules are suspended. What's the difference?
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion that we go into the executive order?
Executive session?
It's executive session for some legal advice.
Sure. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to go into exec session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. Going into the session. Forgetting that. Yeah, we're recessing the exec session for a future exec session item. Okay, we're back. Can we calm down back there? Okay, the order, we're back in regular session of the Board of Supervisors. And we've been given some legal advice in that exec session a few minutes ago.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that we unsuspend the rules.
No, reinstate.
Reinstate, thank you.
There you go. Reinstate the rules.
Second.
With any caveat to that?
With the caveat that we suspend rule number 14.
Okay. Are you still good with that second?
That's
There's no need-
executive privilege,
That's Robert's rules.
but 14. So yeah, we're going back to Robert's rules.
No,
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
removing it from today.
Can you
Point
shed
of
some
or-
light on that, Mr. Counselor?
Is there a question for council? That's what I'm-
So my point of order is this. When we have a motion, we're currently operating under Robert's rules. When we have a motion, the chairman is required to ask for debate in favor and against a motion prior to a vote.
I haven't even gotten a complete motion from anybody yet, so we're still operating under suspended rules. This gentleman's trying to make a motion. I think there was some question as to exactly how he wanted to word that, so I'm giving him the opportunity to clarify his motion.
So, Mr. Chair, to clarify, I move that we reinstate the rules of of the board operation with the caveat that we suspend rule number 14.
Can we explain Rule 14?
Yes, explain 14.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, Rule number 14 states, the most recent version of Robert's Rules of Order shall be followed in all cases to which they are applicable. The order of precedence in determining parliamentary procedure is 1, Constitution of Arizona, 2, state statute, 3, county ordinance, 4, rules of the board, 5, Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, if I may engage in debate?
Does that answer your question? Line
Well, if we're not reinstating that, then what are we instating?
13 other rules.
Mr. Chairman, you were reinstating the board-approved rules back in January of 2019. They contain 14 separate rules, and you would be reinstating rules number 1 through 13.
So can we object if we want Robert?
Ma'am, no. There's a copy in the desk drawer.
So I'm going to take my second back because I think we do need to be under Robert's rules. So I'm going to be a no on that.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you inquire as to the parliamentarian if the order to suspend executive session is correct? A quick glance at Robert's rules tells me that there is no suspension, but we would have to exit the exec session and then reinstate it later. Could I get I'm looking at, it's 9:24, Mr. Parliamentarian.
Mr. Chairman,
I believe, unless I misheard, I thought you recessed from executive session.
No. Then the clerk asked me just to recess the executive order because we're going to go back into executive order on another item later.
You would want to recess the current executive session that you were in.
Correct.
And then when you get to the next item, whatever that may be, you would then ask for a motion to go into executive session on that specific item.
Okay.
And we would need to take a vote on that?
Absolutely, yes.
A vote on?
Re-entering executive session on whatever item
on re-entering, but recessing, we can recess it?
Yeah, you can recess. The original one, you recess it.
And that does not require a vote?
That does not.
Mr. Parliamentarian, since you have the book open.
Hey, Supervisor Kavanaugh, could you give me that site again?
Executive session begins at 9:24.
9:24, thank you. (924) states a motion to go into or out of executive session is a question of privilege and is adopted by a majority vote. So you do need a majority vote on that to go out of. And I believe that is the question before.
So we don't get to recess it?
Right. You come out of executive session.
So we have to,
Mr. Chairman,
go out. Let me
I'm sorry.
Understand what we're doing here. We're going to go out of exec session. So I'll need a motion and a second and a vote. When we come back to another exec session later on in the agenda, then we'll have to have another motion to go into exec session with a second and a vote.
Correct.
Okay? So the suspension portion, evidently there's a question whether we can really do that or not, so we're going to move forward. I'm going to just back up slightly here. Can I have a motion to get out of exec session?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we exit executive session.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. Now, Mr. McClure, you had made a motion to reinstate our rules with the exception of rule number 14.
That's correct.
That's still your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by
Mr.
saying.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Yes.
We have to have debate.
Okay, debate.
And so you would call for someone in favor of the motion, Mr. Chairman, to engage in debate first, and the next person again who is opposed to the motion who would have the next opportunity to debate.
Okay. Who wants to take the position of the motion in suspending the Rule 14?
I guess I will.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor McClure.
I'm saying that we need to not use Robert's rules. It's becoming a it seems to be becoming a problem, and it's getting in the way of doing business for our board, and it's a disruption. That's why I'm asking for it to be suspended.
Okay. You getting ready to tell me something? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Who wants to take the opposition position?
I feel that without Robert's rules, then voices are being stifled, and we don't know what's going to be discussed later in this meeting. I think we're going to need that tool for everyone to be heard.
Supervisor Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board has a sheet of paper with 14 rules on it. And these are called the Pinal County Board of Supervisors General Board Meeting Rules. If we suspend Robert's rules, we will be bound by the other 13 rules, which include the attendance of supervisors shall be noted by the clerk of the board, so on and so forth. The clerk shall prepare a written agenda. The chair shall preside at all meetings. Absence or disability of the chair. Number 6, the following motions are in order on behalf of action agenda items, memorials, or resolutions before the board. Approval, disapproval, continue to a date, table indefinitely. A second to a motion is required. The presiding chair may make or second any motion by a member. Motions may be, number 9, motions may be determined by voice vote or at any time, or excuse me, I'm going to switch to the reading glasses. At a request of any member by roll call, the chair shall decide to declare all votes. If any member doubts the vote, a roll call shall be ordered. All board members present at the time of the question is called are required to cast an aye or nay unless they have previously declared a conflict of interest. Failed. A failed motion requires no further action. 11, in the case of a tie. 12, reconsideration. A motion for reconsideration may be only made the day the vote was taken prior to the adjournment. Any board member may second the motion for reconsideration. In the event, and then 13, in the event of any board member has conflict of interest in connection with a matter before the board, as set forth in ARS 38501, the board member shall refrain from voting upon or otherwise participating in any manner. So something that Robert's Rules does that this doesn't, it's allow for debate. And when I say point of order, it's because we're not following the agenda. We're not following the rules, number 14, and that's the objection here. I'm saying we're not following the rules of Robert's Rules that we've adopted. Robert's Rules, this is the first time since I've been here that we have engaged in proper procedure and debate the way it is set forth in Robert's Rules. There's 90 rules or so in Robert's, maybe 100. There's only 22 we really follow here. There's only 22 we need. And so to suspend Robert's Rules, we would be suspending debate. The purpose of this is to limit one guy on the board who is somewhat vocal, somewhat prepared for meetings. There's some argument that I have an attorney working for me, and that I have an unfair advantage of some variety. It's not true. He can't act as my attorney. He's just a really smart guy, a guy on my staff. So this is what Democrat socialists do. If the rules don't fit the needs, they change the rules. And so, my purpose in being here is to serve people well. And to serve people well, the Robert's Rules were established more than 200 years ago. And every government uses these. The federal government uses these. Our state legislature uses these because they're simple to follow. And what happens is, if an error is made, if there's a question on Robert's Rules, if something happens, what is the procedure for this? Like I've been asking the parliamentarian, quite frankly, he's had to go to the book to look it up because we don't normally ask questions about these things. But there's an answer for everything. It's the order. The United States of America is great in part because of the rule of law and order, and that starts with even the very local meetings that we're having. We need to jealously guard the rule of law, including the rules of meetings, and allow debate. It was beautiful. Mr. Avella said, this is working perfectly. We're having public debate, public discourse, public argument. That's the way it was designed. I was in Kearney not long ago, and they were having a raucous meeting, even louder than we're having today by far. And they were upset. And I said, I got up and said, this is really great because this is the way our founders designed it, is to have raucous debate. Because at the end of the day, we're all American citizens. We all truly love each other. So I say we just hold on to Robert's Rules because it's the right thing to do, not the expedient. Don't take the expedient thing. Don't eliminate debate by going to these 13 very simple rules. Let's keep Robert's Rules in order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion or debate?
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Goodman.
I'm a simple guy. In fact, one of the comments that was made in a meeting that you and I had with a relative of mine, he made it very clear that unless it's in crayons, it's very difficult for Mike to even follow some of the issues that are going on. And I know he said that in jest and in joking. And so when these rules that were adopted by us as a board in 2019, it was with that in mind, was that we try to make things simple and easy for each of us as board members. It doesn't need to be complicated. We don't need the 90 or how many pages of Robert's rules, that if I could borrow this.
Sure thing.
Look at this. That is not necessary, is it? Yes, it is. And I think, and I noticed that the debate is between us here. It's not necessarily with you, because we're the ones that establish these rules as a board, as your elected officials. So we're the ones that will establish and determine the board, how these rules are established that governs this board. And so as I look at this, and you elected us to represent you. This is democracy, right? Yes. And so if you don't like the way we're doing things, your option is to boot us out. Wait. I'm not asking for a response. I'm just making a statement.
Can we hold down the comments from the audience? I mean, let's just try and get through this.
Actually, this is a matter of here. He was talking to you. I'm just throwing these questions out here.
Hey.
Anyway, back to what I'm trying to.
I'll suspend this thing real quick.
And we have a lot to. So if I may continue. I do agree with, if you have some further discussion that needs to be made. You made a comment in regards to an agenda item that's going to be coming up later on. And you made a comment in regards to that agenda item that there should have been more discussion before the actual ruling on that was made. And you made that statement some time ago in regards to that. And that'll be more of a discussion here a little bit later on. But to that point, I feel there is a need for an open discussion. But I think that open discussion can be made prior to the motion itself being given. And if there's need for more clarification, and I think we can go from what Supervisor Surtee has done, where he says, can you give me a better clarification of what you're making or what you're doing? That's a point whenever the discussion can be had and a debate when it can be had. So I don't believe, bringing that item number 14, that's why I second the motion made by Supervisor McClure.
Mr. Chairman, I have a rebuttal debate.
Okay. Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to Mr. Goodman's point, there are 90 or 100 rules in the books of Robert's Rules. This one right here, the most recent edition. But the rest of it is an explanation. If you want to delve into the history of how and why this rule is developed, it's in here. These are the rules. This little gray section right here. And there's maybe 90 or 100, I forget the number of them. But I passed this to I provided this for our supervisors. This is a little 22 rule cheat sheet. This is all we really need to operate here. And it isn't about the rules are too complicated to follow. They're not. They're simple rules. The reason we use Robert's Rules is it protects the rights of those in the minority. And I happen to be maybe in the minority here in vociferously defending freedom, our Constitution, government overreach, government overspending, the way I see it, the way my constituents see it. And so this protects my minority voice, and that's why we should keep it. Finally, I hear it said all the time, our democracy, our democracy. We're not a democracy. We're a representative republic. So we're still under suspended rules currently. We haven't, do we already exit that?
No, we're discussing the motion.
If I may, I have the floor, Mr. Chairman.
I understand, but you asked me a question. We are still under the suspended rules, but we have a motion on the floor, and we're doing the discussion of that motion.
Okay, if we're under suspended rules, then can we even have a vote that we're about to take? We're in uncharted waters, but if we were under regular rules, it'd be very clear because we would just follow this.
I think we were given, excuse me, I believe we were given an explanation in the exec session that we can conduct business under suspended rules. We can make motions, we can pass, we can have debate, I can recognize individuals, even under suspended rules. So there's very little difference between whether we use the Roberts rules or we don't use the Roberts rules. As long as the chair...
We're under suspended rules, correct?
Right.
Then the chair has the total control and the total discretion to shut down debate. Thmr. Chairman,
okay.
Is it not
but
true?
Have I?
That's not. In fact, yes, you have. You changed the rules from 3 minutes to 1. That's something perhaps we should have voted on. Should we? If citizen speech is going to be limited, perhaps we should take a vote to limit the call to the public, rather than have the chairman unilaterally make that decision. To have the chair unilaterally have call to the public emails read, summarized rather than read. That's the problem. We need to follow this.
So, Mr. Chair, we have a motion and a second. Can we move forward?
You want calling for the question?
Pardon me?
Are you calling for the question?
Yes. Can we move forward?
Okay. All in favor of the motion, and does anybody want the motion repeated?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I tell you what, for this meeting, I'm just going to ask that we reinstate the rules. And I believe that this argument is coming to a head at another meeting. And I would reinstate the rules as stated in our 14 rules, leaving Robert's rules in place for this meeting. And we will have further discussion on this.
So you've rescinded your motion.
I'm rescinding my motion, yeah.
Okay. He's rescinded the motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Everybody clear on what the motion is? And this is, we're going from suspended rules back into the regular 14 rules that we have listed. Everybody good with that? Everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Now, I'm going to go back to item number 2 on the agenda and allow the planning and zoning people to present this award to Pinal County. Steve, Lester, if you don't mind.
Go on. Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. This national award that the Pinal County received for our work on the joint land use project with the Arizona National Guard in cooperation with the Department of Defense, with other neighboring jurisdictions. The laundry list of everyone involved in this project is too numerous to mention. However, I do want to give a special shout out to Dorinda Coleman of the Arizona National Guard for providing the initial push and providing a light for a path to navigate the federal grant process. And I think the significance of this award shouldn't be lost on anybody. We were up against hundreds, if not thousands, of jurisdictions across the entire nation to submit awards, and our efforts and your efforts and finance and budget and planning and everybody, basically there's a number of hands that basically support this award for you today. Furthermore, we received an award from the Arizona State Chapter regarding the exact same project, and I'm Happy to present them today, and if anybody's here who had in this project, please come on up, and if you would allow a photo op.
Absolutely. Do we have any of the staff members or people that have participated in this project? If you did, please come forward. I'd like to recognize the hard work of our employees. And when you're recognized nationally, that's a great thing.
It absolutely.
Yeah. So, job well done.
Thank you very much.
You want photo?
That would be fantastic, yes.
Okay. Gentlemen, let's go down and get a photo with our planning people.
And right here, and 3, 2, 1, and a couple more here, 3, 2, 1, looks good, one more, 3, 2, there we go.
Come here. Get up here.
Moves us to item number 3 on the agenda, County Manager's Report. Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Just wanted to remind everybody that next week at 1 o'clock, we're going to be doing a ceremony to honor our veterans out here right in front of the 1891 building. It's scheduled for 1. If the board meeting goes long, then we'll have it as soon as the board meeting is over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4, Purchasing Division Report. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members. My name is Randy Stinson, and I'll be giving you our Purchasing Division Report for November 3rd, 2021. First up today, the board is requested to approve the following contract awards. IFB 223922. This is for the Donnelly Wash low-flowing crossing at Florence Calvin Highway. We recommend Stormwater Plans LLC, DBA SWB Contracting and Paving be awarded a contract for the bid price of $1,601,946 with a contingency of $76,000 for a total construction cost of $1,677,946. This is a public works contract. Please note your report has an error and reads Stormwater Plans LLS and should read Stormwater Plans LLC. Next, the board is requested to approve the following contract amendments. Number 1, RFP 170322. We recommend approval of Amendment 4 to exercise the optional extension period from December 20th, 2021 through December 19th, 2022 with Securus Technologies for the Inmate Tablet Program. This contract is used by the Sheriff's Department. There is no cost to the county for these services. This is a revenue-generated contract with an estimated annual revenue of approximately $25,000. This is the final contract extension. Number 2, RFP 171722. We recommend approval of Amendment 4 to exercise the optional extension period from November 15, 2021 through November 14, 2022 with IMS Infrastructure Management Services, LLC for pavement data collection services. This contract is used by the Public Works Department. And that concludes your Purchasing Division Report for November 3rd, 2021.
Any questions? Comments? Debate? Hearing and seeing none. Board's pleasure.
Mr.
And,
Chair.
and note the
date.
correction on the S to a C. Go ahead.
Where's that at?
That's item number 1 under
Item
contract award.
number 1, okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Purchasing Division Report dated November 3rd, 2021 with the changes of Stormwater Plans LLC.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, Andy. Okay, it brings us to item number 5 on the agenda, which is consent items. All items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member, county manager, or a member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. So, anybody on the board want anything pulled from the consent items of the regular agenda? Seeing none, county manager, public. Seeing none, board's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent items A through I as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you. To approve the consent items. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Brings us to, I'm going to recess the regular meeting and open up the meeting of the Flood Control District Board meeting. Get flood out here. So on the flood district board meeting, we have, appears just one item. Is that right? Yeah. We have one item for discussion, and who is going to present? This gentleman, I assume.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joshua Plum. I'm the engineering section chief from Pinal County Flood Control District.
Okay.
The item before you this morning is for approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Pima County Emergency Management for use of their facility on Mount Lemon for the installation of a repeater system for our Alert 2 gauge system. This is a no-cost intergovernmental agreement, and it does not have a set expiration date at this time.
Okay.
Have any questions?
Any questions? Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 1 as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Let's have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to adjourn the Flood District Board meeting, and we're going to move to the meeting of the Public Health Services District. So we've opened up the Public Health Service Board of Directors meeting. We have the discussion on item number 1. This item was discussed during October 27th board meeting last week. I believe the board's questions were answered. So I think we're at the point we're looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have additional questions.
You have additional questions?
And comments.
I see. Okay. What are they? Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of my constituents, a Democrat constituent, asked, this question is for Dr. Spears.
Good morning, Chairman, Vice Chair, Board of Supervisors, Tasha Spears, Public Health.
Thank you. Dr. Spears, one of my constituents, a Democrat, asked that I propose an amendment to this motion that all Pinal County Public Health employees be vaccinated within 30 days after approval of this grant. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, if I could, Chairman Miller,
Absolutely.
Supervisor Kavanaugh, if I could just clarify, what you're asking me is, if you're asking me that there is a legal authority to do that, because I'm not aware of any legal requirement for vaccinations for the county. So I'm sorry, I'm not clear on your question.
It's a constituent question that I'm relaying. The constituent believes that since public health has the most contact with COVID patients and so on. They asked me if a requirement for a vaccine would be appropriate, and of course I wouldn't like that, but I wanted your thoughts. Would you support a vaccine mandate for your staff because they are most kind of at risk of getting COVID?
So I understand the question, Chairman Miller, Supervisor Kavanaugh. I would like to respond to that question because there has been a lot of discussion here about freedom and defending rights. And so with regard to that question, it has always been the premise of public health that people have the choice when they are provided information and education. And likewise, that would be the case with regard to this specific item. And so it is my contention that for decisions to be made to bar resources from others, that in of itself is imposing someone's views on someone else. So with regard to vaccine mandates, it is our premise that people are provided the information and they make their choice.
And Dr. Spears, you mentioned bar resources. Have we barred, has there been that action? Have we barred resources in Pinal County that prevented people from getting vaccinated?
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Kavanaugh, and perhaps barred, it was the incorrect word, but at this current time, we are being requested to provide resources that we currently do not have. So we are requesting through this particular item that we obtain the funds to be able to offer mobile units to areas of need or to vaccinate in-home or, for example, in assisted living circumstances, long-term care facilities, and so forth. So my apologies if the word bar was incorrectly used, and it was. So thank you for that correction.
And you talk about resources and mobile units. And do you recall that you and I had some email discussion and face-to-face discussion about the possibility of our county checking with budget, providing $3.2 million over a period of 3 years, which would allow us to buy these mobile vaccination units, whereas this grant prohibits that. So are you still opposed to doing a locally funded program to allow persons to get vaccines? Would you prefer the federal grant still?
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Kavanaugh, at the current time, we have immediate needs and immediate requests, and certainly the conversation that we had previously resulted in us indicating to you, and when I say we, public health, indicated to you and your team that that was certainly something we could look at long term and something that we would consider that needed to be vetted, by finance, fleet, legal, risk. So certainly that's a long-term option, and we are in immediate need of resources at the current time.
Thank you. And my next question is for the county attorney. Since last week, have you found any further information that would require Pinal County to abide by any of the guidelines or federal laws or anything outside the work? It's called the work proposal, I think, that Public Health submitted to the state. Is there anything that you found since last week that would require us to isolate people, as the grant language says? It says that you will cooperate, that the recipient will cooperate in isolating people, but is it still your position that we don't have to follow those rules or guidelines?
Pinal County Attorney Ken Volkmer, Chair, if I may respond.
Please.
There are a couple additional things that I would like to provide. There are some requirements that, pursuant the IGA that we have with the state, that we comply with a very particular federal law, and that is the immigration law that is explicitly laid out in the contract. So we are required to follow that law explicitly. As far as any other requirement additionally placed on us because of this grant that does not already exist? No. Again, I would reiterate, this grant modifies a very, very small portion of about a 75-page document. In fact, it adds one paragraph along with some financial changes, but the only change is section 4.7.12. That is the only modification. So any such requirement is already in existence, and I would further note, this was discussed at the end, the county has approximately $112 million, I believe, in federal grants. If that number is not precise, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but that's a very close estimation. There are other federal grants that the county has that requires us to explicitly comply with federal registrations, federal requirements, executive orders, etc. This grant does not have that explicit language. So again, this grant does not require it, but there are other grants that the county takes.
With the exception of the immigration law, you said the immigration law must be followed explicitly. What specifically must we do?
Absolutely. If you give me just a moment, I identified it. So it is in what's called the IGA, which is the Intergovernmental Agreement. Effectively, that is our contract. We'll use IGA or contract, either or. It is. I thought it was subsection 19. Looks like Chris is coming to help me out. 4.12, the Federal Immigration and Nationality Act. The contractor, which in this case would be us or even our subcontractor, shall comply with all federal, state, and local immigration laws and regulations relating to the immigration status of their employees during the term of the contract. Further, the contractor shall flow down this requirement to all subcontractors utilized during the term of the contract. The state shall retain the right to perform random audits of the contractor and subcontractor records or inspect papers of the employee thereof to ensure compliance. Should the state determine that the contractor or any subcontractors be found non-compliant, the state may pursue remedies allowed by law, including but not limited to suspension of work, termination for contract default, suspension and or disbarment of the contractor. If I can put it in layman's terms, essentially there is requirements regarding who may be an employee. And we're required to comply with those very specific Federal Immigration and Nationality Act.
Okay. I have no further questions, just a comment.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So the grant, in my estimation, would require us to hire somebody, an equity coordinator. And the Washington Times, that may have been on the board up on the screen last week, talks about the president seeing racial bias in everything. And we talked about offering a grant or offering funding for the public health department for $3.2 million that would allow them to do the things that they could do with this grant without the extra strings attached. With this grant, I believe that people are no longer individual citizens with individual liberties, but government approved or disapproved based on their vaccine status. And I believe this is unaccountable spending. We're going to send it to a contractor that we have paid in the past, or we have paid contractors in the past $15,000 to $20,000 per day to give back vaccines. And my thought is we could probably do this more efficiently locally. It always makes me nervous when we talk about what the federal government's not going to do. When the laws concerning seatbelts were enacted, this was not going to be a primary reason for a stop, but pretty soon police were stopping citizens because they didn't have a seatbelt on. The federal government told us that the Patriot Act would never be used to spy on U.S. citizens through metadata collection and masking, but now it is. Parents who complain about school board meetings are labeled terrorists, and you think that public health grants programs will not be used to divide citizens one against another by the federal government. We have to caution against this. And why so many questions of the public health department? Because these are the things we must caution ourselves against and make sure we're not adopting the items as clarified by Mr. Volkmer. Another issue is we didn't know we needed a public health equity coordinator until the federal government had a grant attached to it. So there really has been no convincing evidence, no testimony, no outcry from the public on behalf of persons personally known to any other person saying that I have this friend, I know these people who are unvaccinated and can't find where to get the COVID shot, because those people are exceedingly rare. In fact, I've looked for them. Our staff has canvassed hundreds of homes in our district and places where homeless people hang out, and have not yet found one person in our district and places where homeless people hang out and they wanted the vaccine. We just can't find that person. Practically everybody knows the vaccines are free at every pharmacy, Walmart, Safeway, local clinic, and even our public health department. We should provide vaccines to people who want them. I just don't know that this grant is the most efficient way to do it. The public health department has done no preliminary research for this grant, except to point to a federal government study from the year 2000, updated in 2018 for population. The CDC did a study of a social vulnerability index. The scores were 0 and 1. There wasn't a in-depth study. And what I say is, if the CDC wants statistics, they can certainly create them, and that's what it appears this has done. We called our own public health department about vaccines in September, and what we found is there were 3 locations open. One was under construction or remodeling. The other 2 were open every other week for 3 hours and 40 minutes because there was not the demand. They didn't need to be open any more than that. The Cobra Valley Health Clinic in Kearney stopped receiving shipments of vaccines because they were going to waste. Folks didn't want the vaccine. So there's some efficacy issues, there's desire issues. And what is a vaccine anyway? Pardon me while I take a drink. The CDC describes, in August of this year, as of the 26th of August, the CDC told us that a vaccine is a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, protecting the person from the disease. And they describe the verb vaccination as the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce immunity to a specific disease. That was changed 6 days later in September. The definition of vaccine was changed from a product to a preparation. A vaccine in August was defined as producing immunity. In September, it was described as stimulating the body's immune response. In August, the CDC said a vaccine was meant to produce immunity to a disease. In September, the CDC said a vaccine is meant to produce protection from a disease. So we have a moving target with this particular vaccine. When I got a vaccine as a kid, you get a vaccine, you can't get the disease, smallpox, whatever it was. I have great concern about this funding, the efficacy of this vaccine, the way we're going about. I think it's a waste of money to hire a vaccine equity coordinator when we could take money. We have cash in the county and do this much better on a local level. And so while I think that people should have the vaccine if they want it and take their risks, examine the health hazards or health benefits, I'm still going to vote against this because I think it's the wrong thing financially, logistically. I think us as a local government can move much more nimbly to help people get the vaccines, like our office did in District 1 during the beginning of the pandemic. When the vaccines came out, our staff was on the phone all the time helping people make appointments because there was a kind of a haphazard rollout because of the limited supply. So Mr. Chairman, that's all the comments I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions?
Is staff still here? Did Kent leave? Oh, there he is. And where's
Supervisor
Natasha?
Goodman, you have a question.
If I could.
Sure.
So, from a legal perspective and your legal opinion as a conservative Republican elected attorney for our county, the rights and everything as far as this particular grant is concerned, it does not violate, and they still there's freedom of choice still, correct?
Mr. Chair, this grant does not mandate anyone get a vaccine. This grant is merely money that the public health department can use to help administer the vaccine. It does not force anybody to get a vaccine. It does not force anybody to meet with public health. It does not give public health the authority to go into anybody's room or to forcibly jab a needle in anybody's arm. That is not what this grant is about.
And then with that, if there's any further modification, just like there is right now, because this is an amendment to a grant that we've already accepted clear back in 2019.
That's
So
correct.
with that being said, if there's any more modification or any type of other requirements, that would still be able to come before the board, and the board make, if there's those type of adjustments that their federal government's coming in to say, to finish this grant up, this is what's going to be needed. At that time, we can make those kind of decisions, correct?
Chair. Supervisor Goodman, that is correct. There is a provision in the IGA, the contract I spoke about earlier, that explicitly gives your body, as the board of directors, the ability through public health to terminate the contract. It requires a 30-day notice. All monies that have already been expended are not subject to clawback, provided they've been provided as a service. However, those future monies would need to be returned. But the actual systematic way in which that happens is explicitly laid out in that IGA. It's about a page or a page and a half of the contract explicitly saying this is the process, this is how it works. But in the event that this board at any time becomes uncomfortable with additional requirements that are being placed, yes, the board would have the ability as the board of directors to direct public health. You no longer want to comply with this, and you could immediately begin the process of terminating the contract.
Okay, thank you. Tasha, this is for you. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. I'm none of the above. I'm not an attorney. Okay? However, you have been hired to run the functions of the health department for our entire county. Is this grant going to assist you and help you do what it needs to do in your responsibilities as our health director?
Chairman Miller, excuse me, Vice Chair Goodman, the answer is unequivocally yes.
Okay, thank you. That's why I support this.
More questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have an additional question.
Really? Okay.
For the county attorney.
County attorney. Mr. Volkmer.
Sir. I want to point to the COVID-19 vaccination supplemental funding, which states, and I can give this to you if you like, terms and conditions of the Coronavirus Response Relief Act that we will comply with existing and or future directives and guidance from the Secretary regarding the spread of COVID-19. So based on our IGA, we're not going to have to follow that?
Supervisor, I apologize. There are a number of grants. If I could look at the specific grant that you are addressing, that would...
Sure thing. This one is PL 116-260. Do you have an additional copy of this, Josh? Just the one?
My question is this the grant we're voting on?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah, 11.
Because he didn't, that's not.
There are three different numbers that kind of refer to, depending on state, federal, local.
Yeah.
Right.
I apologize. Just for clarification, Supervisor Kavanaugh, could you repeat those same numbers again?
It's PL 116-260, and this is the one you and I spoke about the other day.
Supervisor, with all due respect, I'm not seeing that number. I believe the one we spoke about last time was RFA-IP, I as in Isaac, P as in Paul, 19-1901, the Immunization and Vaccines for Children grant.
And that's through the state of Arizona.
That is correct.
The ones you're referring to, but it's funded by this one.
I cannot assuredly tell you that it's funded by that particular one without seeing the document. I apologize for the bit potential clunkiness.
Right here, the maybe 19-1901. Questions about the paragraph.
So, Supervisor, I believe what you are referring to is a prior amendment that's already been adopted and entered into by this board approximately 6 months ago.
Okay, so we would have to follow that section because we adopted it previously.
Correct. So adopting this does not have any impact on that, but yes, because you previously adopted that, that is accurate.
Okay, and our current IGA is not impacted by that previous adoption? We don't have to follow our previous, with respect to this grant, the $3.4 million that we're going to vote on today, we do not have to follow any of the terms of our previous acceptance of the grant?
If I gave that impression that I misspoke, I apologize. Chair, no, you would have to. You've already agreed by taking the previous about $13 million that you'll comply with that.
Okay. And so the money that we would receive if we accept this today, with that money, we would have to comply with all these other federal requirements that we previously adopted.
That you are already acting under, that is correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely. Would you like this back? Or
Josh will get it. Thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment to the grant. I guess maybe, is it appropriate? I'd have to ask the parliamentarian if we do a motion first and a friendly amendment afterward. What's the best route to take?
That's one method.
Yep, I would agree. That would be one method, to have a motion and then a friendly amendment to that motion.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 1 as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a friendly amendment, a motion for a friendly amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do I need a vote on the friendly amendment?
We should hear it first.
Let's hear what your amendment has to say.
So I would move to add language that the vaccine equity coordinator, contractors hired by the Public Health Department in association with the grant, or employees of the Pinal County Health Department be prohibited from assisting the federal government in quarantine or isolation of individuals, except where an individual is committing a criminal act.
Okay.
Mr.
Chair,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, could we get a legal opinion on that?
It sounds like, are you referring to inmates?
No, if a person, so we cannot forcibly quarantine a person unless they are, if you recall that some people with tuberculosis were forcibly isolated because they were going around purposely spreading it. So that would be a criminal act. If an ordinary person is affected by quarantine or have not received the vaccination, we would not assist the government in forcibly quarantining a person or isolating a person, for instance, who have not been vaccinated. Because, a quarantine and isolate, there are some questions as to the meanings of those.
Chair, this is Ken Faulkner, Pinal County Attorney again. Given that this is a very specific legal question, I understand the question. I am prepared to answer it. However, I would recommend that we adjourn into exec session to discuss it, to get further guidance, and then as the board sees fit, I'd be prepared to answer it publicly.
Okay. So now we're gonna have. I need a motion to go into exec session, so we can get.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter executive session.
I have a second.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. We're in exec session. Exec session.
Mr. Chair, I move we come out of make a motion to come out of executive session.
I have a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. Now, we're back to item number 1 of the Public Health Services District with, we have a motion and a second, and we have Supervisor Kavanaugh is preparing a friendly amendment. Are we good? Is everybody
Thank you,
think
Mr. Chairman.
we're all on the same page? Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt, because I was helping Supervisor Kavanaugh. Did we recess out of executive session?
We
and take a
did.
vote? Okay, thank you.
We did. Yeah.
On our own.
Natasha will validate that for me. Okay. You have a friendly amendment you want to put onto this agenda item for the public health. You want to present it?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The friendly amendment will state that the Public Health Department or designees shall not assist the United States government in the implementation or enforcement of federal orders related to quarantine and isolation, and should Pinal County be notified of any such mandate in the future, the Public Health Department shall immediately notify the clerk of the board, who will schedule a special session at the first opportunity to discuss action before the board.
Counselor, you good with that verbiage? Natasha, did you get all of it? Okay.
Would you mind reading that back, Mr. Chairman, or Natasha?
Or Natasha, because I ain't got nothing to read.
I couldn't do it.
Board, while they're pulling that up, I would just remind the board that Supervisor Goodman, as the moving party, would have to agree to that friendly amendment, and then Supervisor McClure, as the seconder, would have to also agree to that friendly amendment once the language is confirmed.
Thank you.
Chairman, the friendly amendment made by Supervisor Kavanaugh is that the Public Health Department or designees shall not assist the United States government in the implementation or enforcement of federal orders related to quarantine and isolation, and Pinal County should be notified of any such mandate in the future. The Public Health Department shall immediately notify the clerk of the board, who will schedule a special session at the first opportunity to discuss action before the board.
Okay. Good with that?
Mr. Chairman, I think that was incorrect.
Okay. What part was incorrect?
I think you said should be notified, and I think it should have said
Shall be. I think he corrected that.
It says should. I'm looking at it right now.
Mr. Chairman, may I take liberty just to look at the clerk's screen for a moment? That may resolve it.
Same screen. It's right there. It's on your.
It's on your supplemental screen. Is it there?
Okay.
She does have shall.
Mr. Chairman, that is satisfactory.
Thank you. So, Mr. Goodman, are you willing to accept that friendly amendment to the motion?
Absolutely. But with that, I would like, after we do this, I would like a little bit more clarification on the way status quo is as well.
And
I would second the motion with the friendly amendment, yes.
You're good with the amendment as well. Okay, you want some clarification from the county attorney?
Yes, even without this particular statement, I'd like a little bit more clarification according to our discussion that we had earlier.
Pinal County Attorney Ken Faulkner, Chair, Supervisor Goodman. This friendly amendment, while it does give direction to staff, specifically the Public Health Department, it does not actually amend or modify the grant itself. What it does is it provides notification and, again, very clear and explicit direction that should the Pinal County Health Department be made aware of or even rumblings that there's potentially a mandate coming, that they shall immediately report it, where this board can decide whether they can terminate the contract. I know the explicit concern is that the federal government's going to come in and say, aha, we've got you now because, you know, we have all of this money, and we're going to start isolating or quarantining people through edict or presidential order. What this does is this gives, again, very explicit direction, and I would almost call this conditional acceptance, where the board is telling public health, okay, we'll accept this, we'll allow you to use this money, but in the event that this happens, get back before us so we can cancel it. That is really the effect of that friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Can I call for the question? Can we go forward with the
Yes, Chairman.
the vote?
Thank you.
Everybody's good? So, board's pleasure. Or I have a motion and a second with a friendly amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Just for the record, I didn't vote. I was going to ask for a roll call vote, but
You want a roll call
I'm just
vote?
happy with a no vote.
I haven't moved to this next
was
item.
very still convoluted, so I'm still.
Well-
let it be 4-0 then, if it's
No,
possible.
it has to be. It's either it's 4-1 or it's 5.
Mr. Chairman, may I have a parliamentary inquiry from Mr. Keller?
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to our rules that have been, again, readopted for this meeting.
Correct.
All board members present at the time of a question is called are required to cast a yay or a nay vote unless they have previously declared a conflict of interest and submitted such with the clerk. So a yay or nay vote is required of each member.
Mr. Keller, is that under rules 1 through 13 or Robert's rules?
1 through 13 and is rule number 9.
But we're operating under Robert's rules currently?
No, you only defer to Robert's Rules of Order when these are there's some additional questions regarding it. As it says, most recent Robert's rules shall be followed in cases in which they are applicable. But you have adopted certain rules before you get there. Your Robert's rules are a default, and we've already spelled out how that spells out in this case. That is be a yay or a nay.
Mr. Faulkner.
Chair, I would, if the board has in front of it again, the board adopted rules, those general rules. If you look at item 14, it actually sets out the precedent. It's the U.S. Constitution, it's state laws. The board rules actually do supersede pursuant to 14 Robert's Rules of Order. So if our rules that the board has adopted are silent, then Robert fills in. Otherwise, we use those. Those are a higher precedent according to the general rules adopted by this board.
I was going to say that I thought that they set the precedent. And while you're there, in case my question is, if I call for the vote and all in favor say aye, and I get ayes, and I say all opposed say nay, and there's no nays, is it recorded as a unanimous vote?
I would defer to the clerk because I think that's an operation of the clerk's.
So during the open meeting law training that I had on last year, one of the things that was discussed was this, and what it stated was silence is consent.
That's what I thought. which is the way life is.
A point of order, Mr. Chairman. So the clerk has had clarification in meeting, but that's not in our rules. So the question is, under number 9, if there is no vote, then the item doesn't proceed? Because that is clarification that the clerk received, but that's not in our rules. So it said the motion is determined, so on and so forth. All board members present at the time the question is called are required to cast an aye or nay vote unless they've previously declared a conflict. So, for instance, if myself or Mr. Surtee refuse to vote, what happens?
So silence is acceptance, the same as
Do we have
a yay vote.
Okay, is there a rule for that that tells us silence is acceptance?
Chair, Supervisor, you'd have to give me a few moments because the order of precedent is actually state laws. So if that is explicitly in the open meeting state laws, then that would take priority. If not, we may be at an impasse. But I would note that Robert's Rules explicitly says that the rules should be relaxed as necessary to facilitate the ultimate goal of the meeting. So there is the ability, effectively it comes down to a chair's call. And in fact, we wouldn't use the traditional Robert's Rules because Robert's Rules are designed for more than 12 people. If you actually read the rules and you look very closely at them, there's a special section that talks about a small meeting, which you would qualify, which is less than, in the languages, about a dozen members being present, where the rules are more relaxed and more deference is frankly given to the chair to facilitate, because the rules can be cumbersome. They're designed to create order. They're designed to give direction, and when there's a question, they'll be answered. But there's also the provision saying, look, these shouldn't be used as a weapon. These should not be used as a tool to hinder debate. They should not be used as a tool to frustrate the purpose of the legislative body which you act as. So it would not make sense that a failure of 2 board members to take any position could frustrate the ultimate decision making. Whether this board chooses to consider a failure to vote a acquiescence or an aye, or the board could take the opposite position and the board could say, no, we're going to default that as a no. I believe the board's going to have to the chair would have to make that call, or the board as a collective body, because to read otherwise would allow the rules to, again, to frustrate the very purpose of today's meeting, which is explicitly found to be in Robert's Rules to say that is not what you're to use this for. It's a very wordy answer, and I apologize, but it's a relatively unique and complex issue.
So you've asked for a minute to look it up. May we recess? I move that we recess for 5 minutes.
I have one more question of, in order to revisit something, it has to be a no vote. But since this was going to clearly be in the majority, would that be a moot point? It could not. You can only revisit it like Mr. McClure did if it was voted down.
Chair? Sure. So there's actually 2 different ways that things can be revisited. It's either a renewal, which would be within the contiguous 24 hours, or there could be a reconsideration that can occur at a different time.
And that would have to be by a no vote?
The reconsideration, no. The renewal does require it be a nay vote that would have the ability within 24 hours to say, hey, I still want to hear this, or bring it up later in the particular meeting. The reconsideration, anybody can reconsider at a future date. That limitation does not exist.
Okay.
Mr. Kavanaugh? Supervisor Kavanaugh, I'm sorry.
Motion to recess for 5 minutes.
I have a motion to recess for 5 minutes. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. We're recessed for 5 minutes.
Attorney Kent Volkmer, she silenced me because you're not going to like the answer I think I'm about to provide. Under the order of precedent, given that the rules that this board has adopted, the general rules take priority to Roberts. Roberts fills in if they are silent. And under subsection 9, the only available votes are an aye or a nay unless you have a personal conflict. As there has been no personal conflict described, there's going to have to be a vote. Roberts does not specifically contemplate this scenario, because under Roberts, there is the ability for a third option, and that is to abstain from voting, and that can be found in Voting Procedure Title 43, Rule Number 3, and it explicitly says you can never, under Roberts, you can never force anybody to a vote. However, our rules directly contradict that, which says each party must vote. So, Chair, with all due respect, I believe that we have to sit until a decision is made by all 5. And given that there has been some question as to who did or did not vote, I believe it would be most appropriate for a roll call at this time for clarity. And then I believe the clerk would need to wait until each board member has either declared a personal conflict, which has not happened so far, or vote yea or nay.
I agree. So is everybody ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to ask Natasha, will you do a roll call vote?
Yes, Chairman. Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Nay.
Supervisor McClure.
Yes.
Supervisor Surtee.
No.
Vice Chairman Goodman.
Yay.
And Chairman Miller.
Aye.
Chairman and board members, that motion passes 3-2.
Okay. Very good. I believe this moves us to item number 8. Item number 8 has a public hearing component to it. So this is a decision, approval, or disapproval of an extension of EPCOR's, formerly Johnson Utility waste treatment.
Chairman, if we can close the public health and reconvene.
I'm sorry. I've adjourned the public health and reconvened into the regular Board of Supervisors meeting. We're on item number 8. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Kevin Costello with County Attorney's Office. This item is to formally transfer the franchise agreement that was with Johnson Utilities to EPCOR with their purchase of the system and extend it out for the full 25 years from this point instead of taking the previous, what would have been the previous expiration. Item number 8 relates to the wastewater system. Item number 9 is the same situation for the water system.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for the attorney?
Yes, I do. And so I guess what I'm hearing is that this transfer is going to extend another 25 years. Did I hear that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Goodman, yes.
Okay. Approximately how many residents are served by Johnson Utilities in Santan Valley? Do you know?
I think I would defer. There is a representative from EPCOR here. He probably has a better response to that question.
And yeah, it's EPCOR that's really not
Right,
Johnson
right.
Utility, for that clarification. Your name?
Chairman Miller, Supervisors, for the record, my name is Chad Guzman. I'm the Director of Government Relations at EPCOR. To your question, Supervisor Goodman, when we acquired the system back in January, there was about roughly 70,000 total utility connections. So the number of residents therein, it's about 70,000 meters. When you account for population, it's going to be more than that, however.
So if I might continue.
Sure.
Mr. Chair. Regarding that, 70,000, would you say that is the largest foothold that you have in the entire state?
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Goodman, it's 70,000 and growing quickly, as we know. I would put it as one of the largest. We have 12 other water districts throughout Arizona and a couple other wastewater districts throughout the state. There may be one or two that may be around that same size, one that's potentially larger up in the Phoenix metro region, but it's certainly one of the larger.
Okay. And if I might continue, Mr. Chair, with that being said, you're actually inside of municipalities as well, correct? That you deliver services through.
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Goodman, that is correct. We are in both municipal incorporated areas and also unincorporated county areas throughout the state.
Okay. And currently, the way the state legislation allows is for those municipalities to charge a franchise fee, correct?
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Goodman, that is correct.
Okay. And we're limited in our county, or any county, correct, if I could talk to our legal now, as far as franchise fees.
Chairman Miller, Vice Chair Goodman, that is correct. There was a case specifically about that down out of Bisbee, and the county, since it is not specifically granted the authority to charge a franchise fee for franchise agreements, we are prohibited from doing so.
Okay. So as we're going down this path, to my fellow board members, one of the things that I would like us to consider, because of the population in the Santan Valley area and many of the challenges that we face, is that there's a possibility that we might be able to generate some type of revenue for some of the deficiencies that we have there, such as infrastructure, parks, things of that nature for a community that's already been developed.
I don't want to get too far off this topic.
I think it's right in...
We're still good? Okay.
Yeah, because of the fact that it is a franchise that we're granting, and within the municipalities, which is pretty much what Santan Valley is kind of grew into, one of the things that the challenges we have in that particular area is the parks, and any type of regional parks or recreation that is given to, that is made up through general funds through municipalities in the form of franchise fees that they charge for delivery. Municipalities.
Yeah, those are more impact fees, I think. Is that, I'm sorry for interjecting there, but I think that parks are usually, cities and towns can do impact fees on those types of projects. It's not a franchise. Franchise fees are, help me out here, Kevin, they are more for not having to get a permit to cut across the roads, get into the right-of-ways, and those types of projects so that they can keep their utilities going. It's not that they don't report what they're doing. They give us as-built and everything, but it's to speed up the process if they have to repair a line.
Chairman Miller, that is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm off base when it comes to, I was always in the assumption in a municipality, those funds that were generated off of franchise fees went into the general fund, and they're able to use those accordingly.
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Goodman, fees that, whether it be a county, a municipality, if you're going to charge a fee, the fee has to be related to your cost of providing the service.
Okay.
And so if they charge a franchise fee, it is related to their costs of dealing with that franchise and the things that it entails, as some of the things the chairman mentioned.
Okay, that helps me. Thank you.
Okay. You good with that?
I am.
Any other questions? Mr. Cruz?
Just wanted to thank you for your consideration of items 8 and 9, and special thank you to Supervisor Goodman for his years of diligent work on the issues associated with this system. So this long-term agreement represents our long-term commitment to continuing to revitalize these systems and help the region realize its economic potential well into the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chad. Okay. Any other questions or comments at this point? Want to open up the public hearing right now? Anybody from the public want to discuss this matter? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Board's pleasure on item number 9. I mean, number 8. I'm looking at 9.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 9 as presented.
Mr. Chairman.
8. Item number 8 as presented.
We're getting punchy up here. Number 8. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Item number 9 it has a public hearing component to it as well. I think you explained to us that item number 9 is on the water agreement franchise. The first one was on the wastewater. So item number 9, any questions? Hearing none, I open the public hearing. Anybody from the public want to comment on this? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve item number 9 as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. Brings us to item number 10. It has a public hearing component to it as well. And this is a decision, approval, disapproval of an ordinance number 2021 PZZ or C 002-21. Hey, Rem.
Thank you, board members. Today's code amendment, that's what we're looking at today, is to our zoning ordinance, and it is called the Large Master Plan Community Zoning District. This proposal is would create a new chapter in our zoning ordinance that would provide an alternate path to the traditional PAD method of entitlement that we have at this point. Going into the Reader's Digest version of where this came from, right now our primary entitlement method in the zoning department is to use what's called a PAD overlay. Invented in the early 1990s, it was substantially modified in 2012. And what it does is allow changes to our underlying zoning categories that hopefully encourage creative development standards, unique design, and innovative subdivision design. Can also be used in commercial developments as well, but its primary role as of late is to create custom development standards that aren't necessarily provided for in the underlying zoning category. The board has seen many PADs throughout their time, and this amendment would be a relatively different way of entitling those types of developments. Jumping ahead a little bit, this particular code amendment would be residentially focused. And also jumping ahead a little bit more, that during our public hearing or our public outreach program as part of this ordinance amendment, I want to make it real clear that this is not related to the project that we looked at up in Gold Canyon that the State Land Department was looking at. This is a completely separate amendment. Although very similar in structure, this one is more residential focused and designed to be used more for residential developments that offer other commercial and public institutional uses contained within, and is not the Gold Canyon one we looked at before. Now, where did this come from and what is it most analogous to is the MPCMP zoning district, which created a development plan that looks basically like this, where it outlines development areas, which is in stark contrast to our current PAD, which is a more detailed planning arrangement. Basically, with PADs as they're written now, what you see is basically what you're going to get. There are some provisions for modifications of this, but they're generally minor in nature and are driven by after the engineering and hydrology is completed. There might be some tweaks to where the roads wind or some of the open space configurations, and those are done administratively. After that, if the changes are too significant, then they come back through a public hearing process. Of note, the master plan here doesn't get into that level of detail, but is supplemented by which could end up being a large development guide that outlines its development standards for the individual development areas. It outlines its, I have my list here, explicit land use and development requirements that would be established to narrowly limit the applicability. There would be an approval of a master plan. This development plan would show the development areas, but would detail development expectations, but offer reasonable flexibility. There would be a development table that would detail the type of land use densities and intensities allowed in each development area. There would be use districts that would be modeled after our current districts, but not necessarily the same. There'd be design characters and theming. There'd be specific requirements for implementation over the life of the project. More on that in a moment. The development plan under this current code amendment could also impose specific signage standards. There'd be infrastructural analysis, a custom phasing plan, and then additional reports as planned and plans as needed as through the development review. Further, in addition to specific requirements for implementation, there'd be detailed amendment criteria that spells out individually major and minor conditions. So the implementation part and the details of the major and minor changes would be per project. That's a pretty significant change from what we have. So when this development manual comes in, it would outline its own way to amend itself moving forward. So that could be fairly wide open, or it could be somewhat restrictive. It could be modeled after our current process, or it could be all administrative. A good analogy would be the Atessa project that's located south of Casa Grande. The Development Services Director can make a lot of changes to that plan during the life of the implementation of that, and it wouldn't necessarily go through a public hearing process. With more residential focused things, as the project matures and more people come in, there may be a need to have a more stringent approval process as we move forward. But the major change is that the code would not dictate what the amendment criteria would be. It would be the development manual itself. Further, I already talked about that. So it's designed to apply to large-scale residential developments that offer other components. 2,000 acres is basically the limit, so 2,000 and above, which sounds large, but for Pinal County, we've actually got several PADs currently that are well above that, primarily in the Santan area. But for the most part, the limit and kind of line between what constitutes sort of a local area project, keeping in mind 640 acres is a square mile, so 2,000 would be almost 4 square miles. When you get to these large, massive scale developments, the time frame for development expands significantly. So this would allow the entitlement of 2,000 acres and above. Now, it is residential focused, and I've said that a number of times, but it would put appropriate limitations on the character and intensity of uses. It would be standalone. If there's a PAD out there that already is over 2,000 acres, it wouldn't convert to this, so somebody would have to come in and repropose the development manual. Another interesting tweak is that it would allow for flexibility in the defined development area, but it would need to show greater public benefit than what would normally be applied. So the further you get away from the baseline codes, the more you have to supply in terms of public institutional uses, open space, new and exciting architecture, maybe some economic development proposal. The possibilities may be endless. Oops. As stated before, in the Reader's Digest version of this slide would basically be each project has its own development code. Further, as written. It also can outline how it goes through our subdivision planning and site plan approval process, similar to the Atessa version, where certain platting requirements don't necessarily need to follow the subdivision code exactly, and those changes can be made on the planning director's desk. So in your development manual, I would imagine that you would see similar diagrams. This is the Atessa project, actually. Much different than your typical PAD alignment. You have roads and streets. You have drainage report, which is the diagram on the bottom right with the arrows. Your development areas. Of particular note, the development areas would be accompanied by a chart that could be as simple as this, which basically outlines how many dwelling units you get, and then residential gross floor area with your max of, like, for example, development unit 1 is 3.3 million square feet. So the way that the staff would look at that is if a non-residential structure was to locate in DA1, we deduct that from that budget and maintain that budget as the project evolves over time. So as part of our public outreach, we have not received any comments from our colleagues in our towns and cities, both within Pinal County and otherwise. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 8-0 to recommend approval. They had 3 changes that are encapsulated in your ordinance you have in your report. Those changes are: nothing herein shall be construed as limiting what may be included in an LMPC is to be deleted. The other one is that major open space areas meeting a minimum of 18% of the LMPC zoned area shall also include public safety facilities and public services and utilities. And then lastly, any change to the master plan roadway access at the perimeter of the LMPC zoning district would constitute a major amendment. The commission recognized that having changes on the external boundaries of the LMPMC has the most opportunity to provide impacts to surrounding properties, and that I think they were interested in making sure that our typical public outreach would be part of that change program. Within the development, not so much. If you're in the core of that thing, other people within the zoning category have already moved in, or they know or should know of the development plan that exists on the books, but then outside the boundaries is of more consideration. Additionally, have not received any comments in favor or against. A number of questions, primarily revolving around the clarity, making sure that this wasn't part of that Gold Canyon amendment that we talked about a couple months ago, and that it's something completely different. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions or give more detail on the ordinance amendment.
I have one brief question that I'll start out with, and then I'll let the board ask any questions. But you said if somebody wants to make a change, it has to demonstrate a public benefit. Mm-hmm. Who establishes what is a public benefit?
So the public benefit would be a criteria of what is the county receiving in exchange for the, what's the right way to say that? Sort of, if you're getting away from a standard, what replaces the diminution there? Is there an extra larger park? It's really open to how it's defined in the code. There could be a number of different public benefits. There could be a college, a community college that's being provided there, police station, fire station, something along those lines.
It's just, to me, in a sense, when you get to that level, it's a subjective, not necessarily objective scenario. And in one person's eyes, it's a public benefit. Another person says, no, it's not. Sure. I mean, I think that's the slippery slope that always bothers me in zoning. I like this idea because the way markets change, the way products change, the way we're doing business, I think office space may be completely gone, in a short period of time. True. With everybody telecommunicating, and I pray that stick and brick people, come back to stores instead of buying everything online. But I really don't think that's going to happen either. And I think I think for large land holdings, it gives people opportunity to observe the market and make the best decisions that are a public benefit in a sense. Sure. So anyway, that's just my thoughts. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, so this has a public hearing component to it. I'll open up the public hearing at this point. Does anybody from the public want to speak to this item? Mr. Revelis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roberto Revelis, resident of Gold Canyon. I'm a little bit surprised, quite frankly, that this issue has received very little publicity in Gold Canyon, where we recently experienced a significant reaction to the controversy that was created around the major amendment proposal that was withdrawn by the county. I have a practical suggestion to offer. We heard no questions, no comments from the public, because virtually the community is unaware that this issue, this proposed major zoning designation, was being considered. So I'd like to offer a suggestion, like I say. We all know that there are 2 members from our communities, from each supervisor's district, who are participants in the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I understand the administrative restrictions, so to speak, that are placed around the public interacting with members, directly with the members of the commission outside of a formal commission meeting. I'd like to recommend that the P&Z members be permitted and encouraged and perhaps even required to inform their supervisorial communities when there's a topic that will be coming before the commission that might be of concern, and that information be through the county's communication system. In looking at the proposed change, it's kind of difficult to understand because we know that it's going to be applicable to all of the county, but there are few areas in Pinal County that are not surrounded by major 2,000 plus portions of land that could come under this proposal. So I don't have myself a decision supporting or opposing this, but I'm concerned that the procedure has not promoted the idea of publicity so that the public can make an informed decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
State your name for the record.
Jerry Stevenson. I'm from Gold Canyon. This concerned me too. Like Roberto said, it came out of left field. If it hadn't been in the agenda, we wouldn't have known about it. And some of the characteristics that I see is it was developed, as several people said, from the 2017 industrial commercial portfolio. To me, it looks like it's snapped into residential, and there's no definition of how much has to be residential, how much industry can be there, nor, as Mr. Abrams said, what the definition is of that. So, you know, can it be a big plant? Can it be a racetrack? Can it be a resort? Can it be heavy industry, light industry, 24 hours? Does it have rail going into it? You know, those have to be answered. That's pretty critical. This is a big deal. In fact, I see this as, if you take a look at Gold Canyon, where we have residential, you could say, oh, by the way, we can do the amendment all over again and just pull in this change. Okay, you could do that and say, we're going to build 1,000 homes, Rivian, and other, you know, other developments with no, with no recourse. It looks like this looks innocent, but it could have big implications. And I'd like to know who did the county work with on this proposal. Was this Baker and Associates? Was this Michael Baker Associates?
Well, if you'll come up, Steve, and because for the record, we need to make sure that the question is answered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it was county initiated. We worked with our on-call consultant, Michael Baker, to help facilitate notice requirements and construction of the code. And we also worked with our stakeholders.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mr. Stevens?
Yes, it does. And Matthew was the one who proposed the amendment and was at the community meeting. Seems like the same. You know, here's another way to do it. And I'm not saying it's being done in Gold Canyon in particular. It's not. I mean, there's probably areas in Casa Grande and Santan where it fits. So there needs more public process, and it needs to be selective, not just carte blanche anywhere. Thanks for your consideration.
Okay. Any questions or concerns or any?
Can I ask a
we're
question
still in the public hearing portion of this item. Did you have something,
I want to ask Chris Keller, is there any precedent for what Mr. Ravelis asked about P&Z? I mean, P&Z is not our staff. Once we appoint them, they're independent, and they don't really need to report to us, correct?
That is correct. There are actually volunteers that you guys appoint for the P&Z. But I believe there had been outreach postings, and the like that occurred through this whole process. And Steve might be able to elaborate that a little bit more, because this is the second time this has come before this board, if I recall. Didn't we have a work session once, Steve, on this item?
And along with that, didn't the Planning and Zoning Commission hear this like 3 times? I mean,
They did, yes. We did have a work session here at the board. The Planning and Zoning Commission took them 3 meetings to initiate and 2 meetings to adopt.
Right.
Or recommend approval, excuse me.
Recommend approval,
Yes.
right. I knew there was a lot of process in this one. Any other questions or comments? Seeing and hearing none, board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, you will need to close the public hearing
I'm
first.
sorry. Close the public hearing. Do I have a motion? Just going to die lack of a motion?
No, I'll move it forward, but there's some things that, one thing is that we've been working on this for some time, and the one thing that is constantly, that we hear often, that I do anyway, is the lack of communication that we're giving to the public. Based on what you're stating and what's being said, this has gone before our Planning and Zoning Commission several different times. There's been several opportunities for the public to follow that. We only have certain ways that we can actually get the message out there, other than going knocking every door, or even sending a mailer out, which becomes expensive. And so we post these things, we set it in motion, we have public comments that people can come and make their comments and things of that nature. So if I'm looking at this and considering this, I think we've exhausted a lot of those efforts to get the public out and to get their input and everything else. So is it the recommendation of the staff is to put those restrictions or those additional items in the motion? And if so, I need a copy of that.
May I answer that?
Sure.
So that's in the recommendation to the board from the commission. You don't need to adjust your motion to adopt those changes.
Okay, so it's already in the packet.
It's already in there, yep.
So those
Okay.
already baked in.
So, Mr. Chair, with that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number 10 as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Good. Brings us to item number 11. Okay. This is item number 11, where I reach out to my colleagues here and ask, are there any future agenda items that you'd like to see on an agenda in the future?
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Kavanaugh.
We talked about an ethics committee previously, and with no interest being found in that, I'd like to discuss ARS 38-481.
What is it? ARS?
38-481. A member of the public has brought an item to my attention.
Okay.
And perhaps we can include an executive session on that.
Okay. A good enough explanation there, Counselor?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Kavanaugh, if Supervisor Kavanaugh would be willing to work with either legal or the clerk's office so we can properly agendaize this item so that it's descriptive enough to take action or to explore whatever his desire is, that's all I would request.
Okay. You good with that? Okay. Anything else? Okay, moves us to item number 12, which is an exec session. So do I have a motion to move into exec session?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. And I believe all we will do is adjourn when we get out.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.